You are welcome to Postcast run by PM Strategists Corner. And I'm going to share with you the views captured in the discussion with Mr. Ethan Sanders, who is CEO of Sandal Consulting. And he's a very learned speaker and is very learned professional in business industry. Uh, the podcast is essentially to help the organizations to move on in an strategic direction, and that way it helps out to move on with the capturing of the worldview and power of different perspective and views of the experts who are practicing project management and business administration in the field, helping out the businesses to move on. So this is the area where PM strategies helps out the business leaders and particularly the professionals to learn from the expert who have been in the field, who have been helping the businesses to move on. Uh, the advancement of this podcast will go through the introduction of PMO strategies. Then I will also briefly bring to your understanding what is the purpose of the of the podcast, and then the views, experience, and learning guidance of the learned speaker will be captured in discussion with the professional. And finally, we'll share with you the services offered by PM Strategies Corner for the help of businesses to move on. With this, let me move on and to share with you the purpose. The purpose of this podcast is essentially to capture the power of different perspective of the views, experience, and wisdom of the learned, experienced professionals who have been in the field for a very long time and helping out the businesses to move on. So that different perspective and the power of different perspective is something which is highly valuable in the present time when the business leaders are moving on and come across with the situation where it is difficult for them to make their decisions in an effective manner. And there the power of different perspective helps out to make the right decisions and to move on in the directions they are choosing. So that is the real purpose, and I hope that PM Strategist Corner is successful in bringing you this valuable power of perception and perspectives and the views of the learned speakers. Uh, uh, Let me, before proceeding further on, let me share my exposure. My name is M. Aslam Mirza. Assalamu alaikum. I am founder and CEO of PM Strategists Corner, who are helping out the businesses to move on in the present time of challenges. Particularly, I would like to draw your attention to the four books written under the theme of Aura. Aura goes for AURA. So these four volumes are developed with that reference, where R goes for applying project management principles and practices for advancing for transformation of the business, transformation of the organization. U goes for understanding human factor and workplace environment. Um, uh, R goes for respect, diversity, meaningfulness, and growing to leadership. Again, that is agility in project management and collaboration. So, in these four areas of knowledge, you can capture through the books and make use of it for the present time of challenges, which is helpful, and the books are available at the Amazon. So with this, let me move on and bring to your understanding the the speaker for this podcast, who is Mr. Ethon Sanders, and he is a very experienced person and have spent his lot of time and energies in in helping the businesses to move on. I may not be in a position to justify his exposure and experience and bring to you the real understanding. For that, I would like to go to Ethan Sanders to share his knowledge and experience and exposures himself, so that I do not miss out. And before that, let me take you to the complexities, which is helping out, which are the real purpose of this podcast. And these are the areas where the organizations face the complexities, and it starts from external, internal, operational, and strategic. Why external? Because things happening outside the control of the organizations are the one which is bringing all the pressure on the organizations for their survival, for their business advancements, and for their maintaining and sustaining their growth. So the external area of happenings which are beyond the control of an organization are the one which impacts the internal setup of the organization. And the internal setup of organizations brings the pressure and the advancements and the challenges for the operational setup of the business to move on. And that operational setup to keep on moving requires strategic designing to deal with the present time challenges and the external challenges which has come up. So with this, let me share with you the perspective of the learned speaker who is with us, and find out what he has to share with his exposure to these areas in general, and whatever he has been in these situations. So with that, let me go back and find out what Ethan Sander has to share, and what he really wants to come up with and share with us in an effective manner. So that is the area which really requires the businesses to move on in an effective manner, and move the businesses to the area which is really required in the present time of challenges, to stay in the business and to stay with the organizations in an effective manner, and uh, 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 effectively to sustain the challenge and move on. The first question is that how you were able effectively to manage your business advancement, particularly your own business and the businesses you are working for and supporting them. So these complexities, how you were able to manage these complexities, particularly in the time of COVID-19. And before I take your answer for that question, let me explain a little bit that these complexities primarily are listed down into four areas: external, internal, operational, and strategic. Here, the external is the area which is happening outside the control of the organizations, and that impacts the internal setup of the organization, which impacts primarily on the operational advancements of the organizations, and to keep the operational advancements for all time to come, they need to come up with this strategy. So this is how these interdependencies are there. So going back to my question, Ethan, please,
Yeah.
your views, please.
Well, thanks for inviting me, Mohammed. So, I mean, first let me say, I've had a long career. I've been in the human capital, strategy, performance improvement realm for over 35 years. And I have seen it as an internal consultant, as an external consultant, working for larger corporations, working for the Navy, working in nonprofits. And I think your assertions are correct that certainly the world is becoming far more complex. I mean, did any of us think we were going to live through a plague like COVID-19, right? COVID-13. Did any of us think we someday encounter AI, which can wholly change the function of an organization and really the nature of work to a large degree, And certainly when we look at strategy, we start, as you've already said, looking at that external environment. And I think you'll agree, politically, socially, economically, technologically, the rate of change is accelerating many fold, even from when I entered the workforce in the 1980s. So I think that's irrefutable that's going on. So now your question is, well, so how do you navigate all that complexity, and what are kind of the secrets to being successful in such a challenging environment? And I actually have to answer your question kind of from three different perspectives. You've mentioned I am a business owner. I have my own consulting company, Sundial Learning Systems, but also that in that work, I support other people's organizations, trying to help them navigate all this complexity. Oh, and the third leg of the stool is I've been a professor at University of Maryland since 2010, where I teach strategic planning, talent strategy, things of that nature. So, I want to give you kind of each of those perspectives for a moment, if you don't mind.
Great.
So let me actually start from that academic perspective. One of the things I love about teaching is not only the interaction with students, seeing young people learn and grow, but it really keeps you on your toes. You have to stay current in the literature and in the research and in the kind of the leading thinking. And from everything I've seen, it's irrefutable that we continue to have to find this balancing act between long-term enduring strategy and emergent strategy, because the world never stands still as we're pursuing goals that are, say, 2, 3, 4 years out or more. Okay, so you have to have this enduring piece, and we know the stories of organizations like Blockbuster Video, who became obsolete in a blink of an eye, because they really wasn't a blink of an eye. It seemed like it happened in a blink of an eye, but clearly they had missed the changing landscape for quite a while, and that caused these kinds of issues. Okay, so you really have to be able to have that long-term enduring strategy. I don't think organizations ultimately succeed without it. And then you have to have kind of this sense of when are things starting to change around you unexpectedly. COVID, AI, changes in social attitudes towards what it means to be an employee and what loyalty to an organization is. So you have to be able to kind of work through those two pieces concurrently. Okay, so that's from an academic perspective, I think that's clearly what the literature is saying, and I think it's been that way for many decades. Now as a business owner, just running my own company first, it's also, in full honesty, you're never quite sure when you're doing which. It's not like there's a conscious moment each day where I say, oh, and now I'm working on this, pieces of my long-term strategy. I mean, I'm sure if I sat back and said, why am I doing this? How did it end up on my task list? I could easily trace it back to initiatives, strategies, outcomes that I had in my strategic plan. That's true, okay? But also, you're kind of weighing these things simultaneously in your mind. And by the way, often what you're looking for is, what's something I'm already working on? Maybe I didn't take it on for a strategic reason, but it could help me over here with either an emerging need or a long-term enduring thing. I think it's not totally conscious when you're kind of balancing these things and in the day-to-day operations of a business. Again, just speaking as a business owner, I think that's true. Okay. Now, I think working with other organizations, you can't ever forget that your client always knows their organization better than you do. In fact, the whole leadership team knows it better than you do. And to me, I primarily see myself as a facilitator. If I go in and do an environmental scan of an organization, do an internal organizational assessment, and say, here are the 5 goals you need to pursue, it will almost never happen, right? That they've got to have a certain sense of they were led to their own conclusions, they buy in, they understand, they take ownership. So you've really got to play it from that angle as well. So I wish I was giving you a nice, clean answer, but I don't think there is a nice, clean answer. In summary, the world is complex. It is getting more complex. External complexity is different than internal complexity, because internal complexity, we're also looking at what are our capabilities, what does our workforce look like in the future, how is our technology going to have to change, how do we make investments. There's just a lot to it. In fact, Muhammad, I would say as soon as an organization has more than two people in it, it's complex. That's just the way it is, So, that would kind of be my three perspectives on this. And so, how do you navigate it? You make sure you have a really comprehensive long-term strategy that does understand those complexities. You accept the fact that the ground is going to shift behind your feet or underneath your feet, and you have to adjust to that, right? And you've got to be able to step back and look at your progress against your long-term goals. What is the accountability system in place to make sure we get momentum, we're executing, we're adjusting, we're evaluating success. All those things have to do together. And when I work with clients, I always sell these things. I sit there and say, it's mostly about strategic thinking. It starts with really good strategic thinking. Strategic planning is easy if you thought strategically about things first, right? You got to think strategically and tactically at the same time, because there's no point in having a whole bunch of goals that you have no capacity to implement. So you got to be thinking, could we actually execute this thing? And then you have to think about momentum. You're much better to implement a few small things and get some success and then implement more than trying to take on the world all at once, okay? And then you have to have some kind of mechanism in place to really look at what you're doing, And most organizations, their capacity for change is much less than they think it is. My Ukrainian grandmother used to say, your eyes are bigger than your stomach, And most organizations, their eyes are way bigger than their stomach. It's everything they can do just to keep the lights on and run the machine. Trying to take on additional work that's strategic is very challenging. So that was a long-winded explanation. I do want to say something, Mohammed. You and I first connected because I had a posting on LinkedIn asking people how are they balancing these emergent and enduring kinds of strategies. And you said something absolutely brilliant that immediately gave me an epiphany. You said, I noticed in your profile you love to ski. And isn't that what you do when you ski? Well, let me first say I'm an avid skier. I've skied over 50 years, skied all over the world. And as soon as you uttered that, Mohammed, I stepped back and said, that is the perfect analogy for what strategy execution and emergent strategy integration looks like in the real world. So for those of you who don't ski, you take a lift up, you stand at the top of a slope. Most important thing is to look all the way down the slope. In your mind's eye, look for the path that you want to take. And generally, the straighter that path, the better. Now, if you go straight towards that path, you will crash. You'll get a lot of speed up and you won't be able to control it. Okay. So you're kind of picking your path through the moguls, down the slope, looking at where the steep parts are, where the ski conditions are good. This is all going through your mind very, very quickly. When you've done it long enough, it's really unconscious. You're standing there taking in breaths, but you know where your brain is going, right? Now, here's the funny thing about skiing, okay? Once you're running down the slope, the worst thing to do, the absolute worst thing to do is look at your feet. If you look at your feet, you'll probably fall. And the reason is, at the speed you're going, by the time you feel something a little bit unusual under your feet, maybe your skis start to slip a little bit, right? Or your skis are going a little bit too sideways. By the time you think about it, it's too late, right? Because you'll be on the next mogul, on the next bump, within seconds, okay? So really where the stability comes is from thinking about 2 turns down the slope. I think about 2 turns down the slope. So I'm here and things feel a little weird, and I'll make a turn and I get a little more stable. I'll make another turn, I get a little more stable. And before you know it, you feel like you're flying, which is what I love about skiing and what I love about leading businesses. When you finally get that stability, you start to see that progress. It's magical in my view. So I think that is, and I thank you, Mohammed. I'm going to steal that analogy from you for the rest of my life. You enlightened me, and I appreciate it.
I loved your one sentence. Eyes must be bigger than stomach.
Yes, that was my Ukrainian grandmother. and it's true.
Yes, you are very right. In the
Yeah.
present time, it is what the requirement is. And
In fact, I'll just add, Mohammed, if we had to say what's the biggest threat to organizations across the board, for-profit, nonprofit, corporations, right? And I'm a human capital guy, I'm biased here, okay? But I think we've stripped the gears on the workforce. Since really the 80s, we have been so focused on making organizations leaner, and of course, automation may help with some of this. It may make it worse. But if you look at most organizations, and I deal with dozens and dozens of organizations a year, you go in and there tends to be a feeling that we're just trying to survive. We're just trying to answer our emails. And Gartner did a study on this. They showed the average American manager goes to 5.5 hours of meetings a day and reads and responds 122 emails a day. So just put it at a minute an email, okay? So you're almost at 8 hours there, and you haven't used the restroom, you haven't eaten, you haven't, and we always have our day job things we have to do, and I think really the urgency of burnout is getting much, much more pronounced, especially since COVID.
Very right, very right. And in that scenario, to keep the eyes open and bigger.
Yes. That's the problem with strategy work. Nobody's day job goes away. You still have to do your day job and start building for the future. It's not easy.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I love that. Thank you very much for sharing all this.
Of course.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's move to the next question. Now, under these circumstances and with all this learning and the things we see in the present time, only a couple of days back, I was reading a report from McKinsey and Company who said that in 2025, we had five major shifts. Five major shifts. Okay. Now, what do you think and what do you propose to the businesses, particularly to the business leaders and business managers? The strategy or the thinking or the competence development they must look for to prepare for themselves to move on in the time to come.
Yeah. Well, my background is performance improvement. That's how I got started in this business, and there are two very important truths you have to keep in mind, right? Actually, maybe three. The first is performance happens at multiple levels of the organization. So are we talking about organizational level performance, the entire entity? Are we really talking about teams and groups? Are we talking about individuals? And I think each one of those has to be dealt with a little bit differently. By the way, there's also the process level of organizations and the job performance level. So let's break this down. So as quickly as I can, I'd say if we're talking about organizational performance, an organization setting strategic goals, putting plans in place, backing them up with processes and leadership and information, my best advice is you got to use systems thinking. I just finished saying organizations are very complex things, right? If you look, Mohammed, at what's in our society writ large, we have political systems, economic systems, legal systems, processing systems, and everything that exists in society exists inside the four walls of an organization. So you really need systems thinking to think about, do the processes and the technology match the jobs and the goals? Okay, do we have designs in place to really track these things, understand the integration of these things? So absolutely, organizational performance requires that you have systems thinking, because the truth is, you fix one little thing over here in the organization, the problem pops over here. You say, let's train everybody more. That's going to get better. And suddenly you realize, well, but the processes have changed. Oh, so we trained them on the wrong process, and now we got to go fix the processes. And then we realize, but wait, the technology has changed. It doesn't fit the process either. Okay, so the old Indian fable about five blind men around the elephant, right? It's the classic problem of five blind men around the elephant. If you only look at one part of the elephant, you're never going to get the right answer. So to me, that's really organizational level performance. Okay. When we talk about team level performance, this is just my personal belief, and it's backed up by a lot of good literature, which is at the end of the day, it comes down to leadership, right? And not just being a good leader, but having a very pervasive attitude that as the leader, my job is to manage the environment, not manage people, right? In other words, I want to create an environment as a leader where fairly average employees can be very, very successful. They have the information they need, they have the tools they need, they have the feedback they need, they have the goals that they need, and it's again systems thinking, but it's at this team level, and I think the power of a team can't be outstripped by any individual. Most great things in organizations happen because of a team, So my job leading a team, and any leader's job, is to understand that entire environment that people are working in and dedicating my efforts to removing barriers, creating support systems, create a sense of belonging, right? Ensure people not only have the skills to do their job today, but build growth trajectories for people so that they don't get bored and they feel engaged in the mission. So I think that's very important. And then at the individual level, I really think it boils down to people have to know that you're personally invested in them. They're not just a cog in the wheel. They're going to make mistakes. You've got their back no matter what happens, although if they start to undermine the benefit of the greater good of the team, of the organization, you have to deal with that as well, but it's really balancing that organizational level, team level, individual level that will ultimately help you navigate through any kind of change, any kind of disruption. But it takes practice a lot, and I'm still practicing.
Very right, very right. Because that's the most difficult part of human side, to change.
It's
Thank you very much. Yeah.
It's very difficult for people to change,
Yes.
Although I will tell you, Mohammed, I absolutely don't believe the saying that people resist change. I think that's a convenient excuse to throw up your hand and say, well, no matter what I'm going to do, nobody's going to like it anyway, so why bother? Okay? People resist the unknown. People resist the undesirable. But your ability to frame the change authentically, truthfully, admitting the drawbacks, right? But to frame it in, here's where the benefit's going to get all of us down the road. If you could do that, people will actually put up with quite a bit of discomfort to get to something they feel is better, And by the way, the most vivid example of this I've ever seen was COVID. If you look what happened in employee engagement scores across the world, is employee engagement scores went up during COVID. It created a catalyst for us to care about each other. It created a catalyst for us to be clear in our communications. It created a catalyst to work towards goals, even though we were up against incredible adversity. And, by the way, the military's known this for thousands of years, right? People generally are dedicated to the mission. The soldier on their left, the soldier on the right. We do very, very well when it's clear how we can help each other.
Very right. Very right. As a matter of fact, human beings are only resistant when they feel that they do not know what needs to be done and where they are going and why they are going. If these basic questions are responded effectively to each member, then people like to change, like to move on, like to go for the betterment, not for themselves, but for all others around everybody. So yes, I totally agree with you, and that's how the change really takes place.
Well, and I'll tag on to that. Multiple organizations have performance improvement models. So what are kind of the universe of factors in an organization that either drive or inhibit performance? Physical resources, information, technology, training, and conference board, way back when the Harless Performance Guild was around, they tend to find the number one cause of performance problems is lack of standards and feedback. Something so simple that employees think they're doing a good job. They think they're humming along, setting the world on fire, and nobody's bothered to tell them what's the goal and how they're tracking against that goal. This is something that's actually not that hard to accomplish, But we live in this world where we have so many filters. We say, well, how could people not know their work is making a difference? How could they not know that their work is substandard? Well, nobody's ever told them. That's how they don't know. So it's a big problem. It really is. Yeah.
Very right. Very right. Well, that's how it is, and it really matters. And thank you very much for your
Oh,
So
it was
strong views and so strong suggestions, and definitely is going to be helpful. I do not know if you have enough time to share briefly your introduction, which was supposed to be in when we started, but somehow I missed that. For our prospective participants, I think it will be helpful if briefly you just give your outlines of your exposure and your work,
oh,
just for
my
their interest.
background. Yeah, yeah. So I think I've had a fairly unique career. I actually started out in customer service for an international shipping company, and within a few years, I fell in love with the idea of organization development, helping organizations. So I went back to graduate school, and in 35 years, I have worked for two large nonprofits. One most recently AARP, which is the largest social mission organization in the world, where I was director of learning, and first for American Society for Training and Development. I then started my own company, Sundial, in 2001. We mostly did instructional design work for nonprofits like United Way and SHRM. And one of our clients was the US Navy, which was our only federal client. And they offered me a job at the Human Performance Center in 2004. So I went to that's how I ended. I'm now in Virginia Beach. So I ended up here as a director of organization development. And I did that for 5 years or 4 years. And then I went to ICF International, which is not International Coaching Federation. That's different. This is a very large federal consulting company, international consulting company in DC. And there I mostly worked with federal agencies, doing mostly strategic planning, team development, leadership development. And then I took the job at AARP in 2015, and I've been back out on my own full time since 2023. And then I always moonlight. I don't know why. Having one job is just never enough for me. So as I said, I've been at University of Maryland in organizational psychology since 2010. And then I just started teaching undergrads a year ago at Old Dominion University in Norfolk. So I keep kind of busy, and I get to go skiing because I'm independent. So, I'm often working from a ski lodge somewhere. So anyway, it was a real pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on. Maybe I'll see you in Houston. That would be awesome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's definitely going to help my prospective listeners to enhance their interest, that they are listening to somebody who has such an extensive and rich experience and exposure. And definitely your suggestions and your guidance will help them to move on in their present career and present business challenges. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Take care.
I thank you very much, Ethan Sandor, for your valuable knowledge, experience, and exposures you shared in response to your to my two questions, and those are definitely valuable for the prospective participants who are going to learn from your experience and exposures. Again, thank you very much, and it's really helpful that you brought this understanding and help and brought the valuable thought process to the professionals who will be benefited with your experience and exposure. Once again, thank you very much. Here, I would like to share that the PM Strategies Corner is poised to help businesses, particularly and professionals in general, to move on in strategic directions. And for that, they provide the services like diagnostic assessment of gaps in strategy and execution, for strategic alignment and disciplined strategy execution, which is the most challenging part in the present time, because the alignment and the discipline, that is the most important and challenging factor, because without having these two areas, you may not be able to move to your desired goals, what you have set for your businesses and for your sustainability of the business of the organization. So that is the area where the services are provided by PM Strategists Corner. PM Strategists Corner also provides the services of PMO Center of Excellence, and if you have the PMO in-house, it can help you and build up the competence and build up and maximize the productivity of your PMO. Uh, the PMO is essentially the area which helps with the center of excellence to help out the business managers to have better time spent on their business challenges. And the support is provided by the PMO Center of Excellence, where the change management, the sustainability advancements, the discipline execution of the systems, the collective flow of the business. Those are the areas in general which are really required and supported by the PMO Center of Excellence. Here, the most important challenge is the change management, which is in the present time, is the most required to stay with the change taking place in the work environment. And for that, it needs to be transformed into your systems, in your culture, because without that, you may not be able to capture the real value. So for that, PMO Strategies Corner can help you in advancement in that area. Uh, all these areas are not possible unless and until you have proper leadership mindset and leadership training. So for that, PMO strategists also provide the systems and the processes to help the leaders working in those areas and to capture the maximum outcome of their performance. Further on, without training, the support services may not be materialized, and for that reason, the PM Strategist Corner provides the training services also, and it helps building the resilience and adaptability of the teams and the leaders particularly. It helps enhancing the communication and collaboration, because communication channel is the backbone of an organization's to go on and implement the way they want and to ensure the collective flow of the business. And for that, the driving is needed for the innovation and creativity, because innovation and creativity is no more only the job of few managers assigned particularly for that job. It is supposed to be carried out by every manager and every team member at at the trench level. So for that, you need to have systems, you need to have culture, and for that you need proper training. And for that, you need to develop your teams, and you need to develop the strategic thinking of your work teams, your workplace, so that you have that environment which is supportive in every way. Because without supportive culture, you may not think of moving to your required goals and to your required directions. So for that, PM Strategist Corner can help you in developing that culture. With this, thank you very much for your attention, for your presence, and for your learning interest. With this, I wish you the best in your all endeavors and for your advancements in the present time and all time to come, and for your success in the present time, and for all time you are preparing yourselves to move on. With this, thank you very much.